Where's the...
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host, David Straggy, and here we have the Inside Movies Galore crew with me. Hello, Dustin. Hello, Dane.
My York Ripper quack.
Hello, Red Raven.
Hi.
Hello, Katie Cadaver.
Hello.
Hello, Kabuki Jake.
Hi, how's it going?
So today we are
going to call you Bayou Jack. I'm sorry.
So today we are going to talk and discuss a movie that was filmed in 2015 by a director who had his directorial debut from short films.
Kind of like everyone.
His name is Jason Lei Howden. And this film was somewhat filmed in New Zealand, and it basically goes through apparently the life of a young kid who seems to go through some abusive concepts, and then eventually starts a band that calls forth these demonic zombies of all his neighbors. So let's start.
If you guys have seen Suck, Trick or Treat, like the one with Sammy Kerr that we covered before, and The Evil Dead, that's basically what you get with this movie.
Yes.
And early Peter Jackson.
Well, anyway, where were we going, Dave?
So I was thinking I was going to ask Kabuki Jake what his whether this was a first time watch for him, and what were his first thoughts on the film. Go ahead, Jake.
Well, this was definitely a first-time watch. This was a little outside of my usual wheelhouse. I thought it was interesting. Honestly, a lot of it was not a bad film. The gory parts got a little over the top, and
Did you have to close your eyes just a little bit?
A little bit. But in terms of the basic story, plotting, writing, whatever, it was mostly pretty entertaining. Yeah.
Okay. Going over to Katie. What was your thoughts on this film?
Well, this is a rewatch for me. I originally saw it. Ryan bought it before we ever saw it, but we caught the trailer for it on the Blu-ray for Turbo Kid. And we had seen Turbo Kid in the theater in Chicago, and then we bought it when it came out on Blu-ray. So this was one, we saw the trailer and we were like, yes, we have to have it. So Ryan bought it, I don't know, whenever it came out. And we got it right away and watched it. And yeah, it's like Dustin was saying, it's totally like a Trick or Treat Evil Dead mashup in a really fun way. Like, I'm a metalhead, so I can appreciate the whole theme. You know, it definitely was a movie that, like I said, just a trailer, I was like, yeah, this is a cool movie. So overall, I liked the film. I was glad that we were covering it this week. Because yeah, it's one of my well-liked newer films in the last 5 years.
Okay. Red Raven, why don't you tell me? Was this a first time watch for you? And if it was, I figured this was your pick. So go ahead and tell me about it.
This was like my third time watching it, I believe. Okay. And I love this movie. This is like one of my favorites, and I just think everything about it's right on. And I also liked how everyone said it reminded the Evil Dead.
Okay.
And I just like all the heavy metal references because I'm really into metal music. So.
Okay. Cool. Going over to Dane, why don't you tell me, was this a first time watch for you?
Yes, it was. Yeah, this was like everyone said, Evil Dead. So very much Sam Raimi, early Peter Jackson influence here, and I could definitely see that. I was thinking a lot about how with with filmmaking in general, and especially with horror, you have a lot of creativity with New Zealand film, um, and I think that they a lot of the film and TV stuff I've seen that's come out of New Zealand has been pretty charming and pretty creative. I'm thinking a lot of Flight of the Conchords. That's kind of what my brain immediately goes to when I think of New Zealand. That or like Meet the Feebles, which Peter Jackson did. Um, yeah, that's where my brain immediately goes. And so in this way, I think there's definitely the New Zealand charm factor in there. Story wise, kind of stay. That's the only thing I'd say is like I think it had the charm. I think it was well produced for being what I assume was a low budget production. I think story wise, plotting, pretty standard for this kind of thing. I think in terms of the goriness and everything, if you've seen a Sam Raimi film, you've seen things like that. So it was a little bit seen it before. Still solid, so definitely satisfying for fans of that genre, the subject, that particular horror subgenre. I think that for me, the parts that I like the best were actually in the first third where it was just this kid and his life. And the scene I liked the best was where he's in full makeup, full black leather with the gauntlets and everything, and then she's in all white and they're having ice cream and all that. I was like, I would love a whole movie like that, almost like a almost like the metalhead equivalent of something like Napoleon Dynamite meets Flight of the Conchords or something. Something really charming and sweet and everything. Which again, not to rewrite the movie, because what was there, was fun enough. It's just for me personally, I have seen a lot of films like that, and this one definitely had the unique New Zealand flavor. Just I have seen other films like that, and so I kind of globbed onto the parts that I thought were a bit more not. I don't want to say the other parts were not genuine, but that one felt the most real and like I haven't quite seen that before. If there was a whole movie about just like the unlikely romance between a quote unquote good girl and a metalhead. You know what I mean?
And I tell you, if Taika Waititi had done that movie, I'd have been there for that.
Yeah, but I think that would have been a little bit more unique, and or it would have had the chance to be a little bit more of like a slice of life kind of movie. Which again, I don't want to rewrite the thing because I think that doesn't get you anywhere. Those were the parts that did feel a little bit more genuine and felt a little bit more possibly personal. And so it's like and especially if you've seen something like Flight of the Conchords, which is a kind of fictionalized, exaggerated account of the real Brett and Jermaine's attempts to get themselves noticed. It's like there's a lot of genuine kind of slice of life humor and sweetness in there that I think makes it infectious and charming. But that's just my 2 cents.
I don't know that a heavy metal movie is supposed to be like that though, so
Well, I don't know
I
if
think
it
we
is.
had
I
just
don't know
enough
if
of
it
a
is
peppering
either.
of that.
I don't know if it is either necessarily, but again, that's the kind of movie I would write versus the kind of movie that the intended audience may necessarily even want to see. So that's the big disconnect, and I'm saying that as a fan of metal and of horror. So,
Well, having had the other title of Heavy Metal Apocalypse as well, I believe. Dustin, was this a first time watch for you?
Huh? Oh, right. I'm on this one. I forgot. It took me so long. I can't remember. Where am I? What am I doing? Oh, right. Deathgasm. Well, I had heard about this before back when it came out in 2015, and I had just universally positive things, and it'd been something I'd always wanted to see, but it kind of got lost in the shuffle, and so I saw it for the first time tonight for this episode, and it was pretty great. I was really happy with it. Uh, Like, it had kind of a balance of, like, it had a pretty good, like, gore humor balance. Like, there was a pretty ridiculous scene that I'm pretty sure we're gonna discuss. I bet you guys already know which one. And, you know, it was really silly, but at the same time, it didn't take me out of it. Like, it had, like, just enough. So, I was really happy with it. The music was good. Like, everything was good, and I can't really think of a single negative thing about it. Which is...
Well, all the stuff I was saying before, I will not chalk up as a negative. I just want to make that clear.
I thought your point was ridiculous and didn't pay attention. I'm sorry.
Do you ever?
Generally, yeah.
Well, I'm just going to jump in here and say that I'm glad that you, in the very beginning, Dustin, brought up the point that this film kind of reminded you of like Evil Dead twist up
versus Sammy Kerr. So a better
Brandon also said for me to say that that's what what the movie reminded him of. So
yeah, so a better
you guys were thinking alike tonight.
A better synopsis of this movie would be that this metalhead's mom is sent to an asylum, and he has to live with his, like, conservative normie, for lack of a better word, like, family. And he's trying to, like, form a metal band, and they're really not into the whole metal thing. Like, basically, like, all the old stereotypes. You know, they, like, try to, like, pray over him and shit.
Well, funny how his Dungeons and Dragons buddies just ended up being band with him, eh?
Well, that was great too. We'll get to that. But anyway,
the guy with the glasses reminded me of you, Dustin, a little bit.
Oh, I'm not that lame. Fuck you. Anyway, he meets up with another metalhead, and when they start their band, I can't quite remember the setup, but they find lyrics to the Black Hymn and basically turn the town into demons, like looking for power.
Which kind of gave me like a Lords of Salem kind of a vibe in a sense, because of the that, you know, when they
Lords of Salem wishes it was this good.
It was inside of a record that they lifted off of one of their heroes who kind of gone into hiding, I guess.
So ultimately, what do you think of the character of the main character? What do we think about him?
He was pretty cool. Like, he was a very believable character. Like, there wasn't anything really crazy about him. Like, you could meet this person, like, in high school, and you'd be like, yeah, you know.
He reminded me
of my friend Brandon from high school, actually.
He kind of reminded me of Wally Wiggins' character in Dazed and Confused, but more of like a metal kind of leaning version. You know, same basic idea. I don't know.
I think he was I thought he was a little bit like Michael Cera if he was a lot cooler than Michael Cera. If that
Nailed
makes
it.
So what do we think about his friend Zach?
Zach was a lot more like my friend Brandon in high school was. Like assertive and a little
Zach's a dick. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Well,
He's pretty much a dick.
In terms of his delinquency and even a little bit of his physical appearance, I got an initial young Ozzy Osbourne vibe from him, just because not in terms of his speech or mannerisms, but just some of his background, because Ozzy, when he was a teenager, was, you know, a delinquent basically, and was really just he just had trouble from day one, and then of course he became Ozzy Osbourne.
I wouldn't have said Ozzy, but if you're wondering what this character looks like, if you've played Friday the 13th the game, he's like Adam Palomino or whatever that guy's name is. You'll know him right away when you see him.
Speaking of people reminding you of people, did anyone feel that first guy from that religious organization, the one that ended up getting beheaded, was he not Ewan McGregor?
What?
I saw it, I'm like, holy crap, that's... It's
Well, hey, you know, the old guy that they tried to steal the record from and that they get the pages from, I could have sworn to God that was Iggy Pop.
I was gonna say that too. It looked a lot like him, and they probably took
I
some
didn't
kind
see
of
that, but
design
now I
elements
do.
from him.
Especially after he became a zombie.
The one friend looked like the guy from Mallrats.
Which one?
The heavier set kid, he looked like the guy from Mallrats.
Kevin Smith.
Which
No,
even-
there was like a guy in the Mallrats movie.
Oh,
I
you
can't
mean
remember.
Willem?
Oh, the
I
guy.
Yeah.
can't see the freaking sailboat. Yeah.
Which even our leading character even looked a little bit like Jay out of the Jay and Silent Bob duo.
I would disagree
Yeah.
with that assessment.
Well, just
maybe
more
they were
so when
kinda
he wore the
emaciated
cap.
with dark hair, yeah.
I've
More
had
so
the
when he
hugest
wore
crush
the
on
dark
Jason
cap.
Mewes for years and years, and I will tell you, no, that is incorrect.
What is it about him that does it for you?
He is like every guy I dated in high school. I don't know.
I saw him
long
once at a Wizard World, like from
I
a
wish-
distance. I saw people meeting him and stuff.
Yeah, I'd like to meet him, and I'm sure I'll cross paths with him at some point. He'll be at one of the cons that I'm at, but
I think I ended
Yeah.
up following his page, and he does all kinds of online gaming for people. He shows up on my Facebook page, and he's playing like the newest game that's out there or whatnot. So,
You know, I always try to, if I'm at a convention and I see somebody like a celebrity, like I always try to go say hi, although sometimes I have like nothing to say. Like I met Ernie Hudson and I wanted to be like, why did you do God's Not Dead 3? But instead I couldn't think of anything and I was like, wow, it's cool to meet you. It's like, don't accidentally insult the celebrities.
Well, I liked him in the Miss Congeniality movies, kind of a smallish role, but
He was in The Crow. Like, I think that was actually what I said to him. Like, I'm looking at his table of stuff aside, he's got pictures from The Crow, and I was like, oh, you were in The Crow? And he just looks at me like I'm insane. And I was like, oh, damn it.
so what do we think about the character of Medina?
Very nice.
I liked her a lot. Well, the only thing I'd say, I feel like her, which again, this is some of the characterization, like, we only really get to know our two male leads all that well, and even then, it's not, they don't really get that far beyond types. And so with her, like, she starts off as being the inquisitive good girl, and then she listens to metal, and then all of a sudden she's a metalhead, and it's like, you know, for a
How it
comedy,
works.
it's like, okay,
That
you
is
know,
that's a great take.
well, for this kind of movie, sure, it can be okay. It's just like her
We're gonna-
her
that's
change
how
of,
it happens, though. That's real
Well,
life.
but her change
That's what
of
happens when you
character is
listen to metal.
Hey, Katie, you want to describe the moments where they both, like, find the metal, like, what they see? Pretty great.
Hers is like two chicks making out in front of her, and
Katie, oh no! Okay, there are two of these scenes. How about you both do one? There are two. One for him and one for her. Go nuts. Go.
I don't remember the one for him.
It was really brief.
The one for him, he was far away, like on a mountain, and he just brought out his guitar. He started strumming the tune.
He turned into like fucking Conan with an axe.
What's her
Oh
name?
yeah.
Medina was beside him, looking up at him adorationally, like he was her idol. And then all of a sudden, he looked down and realized something was wrong, and took her breastplates away.
I don't know. That's like real life for me. My boyfriend's a rock star. That's just how it works.
I see.
Well,
So there's an element of biographical truth in here.
Very relatable.
I think
I enjoyed it in the one for her. It's exactly the same, like with the girls and everything. She's got like an axe. Like I appreciated that. So,
I liked her as a. I thought the actress portrayed her well, and she had a good toughness about her.
Great.
I guess that I wish that her arc was a bit more defined and a little bit less, not really random, but just more like convenient. I would say, if that makes sense.
Give her a bit more to do.
Well, it was they had certain points they wanted her to hit, and they weren't at all shy about it. And there was no real subtlety or shading to her character arc. It was just okay. She starts off the good girl, has doubts about her douchebag boyfriend. She finds metal, and all of a sudden she's a badass. That sort of thing. It was.
Well, because
Yeah, that's what I didn't really. Again, like she did a good job, the actress did, but
Yeah.
on paper, it's just like that's very convenient. Now, again, for this kind of movie, that doesn't matter as much
Yeah.
because the fan base
Well, I
isn't
feel that
necessarily
like
there
that.
for that. But
I feel like that's part of the style of movie. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I mean.
if you're familiar with like the Ash versus Evil Dead, the newer Evil Dead TV show series, yes.
So good.
There's a lot of characters just like Medina. These sort of characters that come in and out. They serve a purpose, but it's really quick, get to the point. Like they have to be badasses because they're fighting the Deadites. It's the same sort of
Mhm.
idea. Medina
Well,
really does step up when. I mean, she's like the most badass of all of them. She's saving the guys, and she
well, and
sort of
I
keeps
like
them
her,
in
and I
place
like
too.
her quite a lot. I do feel like and I do feel
I
like even
understand what
with
you're
the
saying, and
Evil
what I'm
Dead,
saying
well,
is
but even
that
with even with the Evil Dead movies, though, I do feel like in those the intent or the structure is, at least in the original trilogy. I'm not counting, well, with the Ash versus Evil Dead as a TV show, and you automatically have more of a chance to get to know the characters in the world. With the original three films, the emphasis for there was always more on here's Ash, he's in the cabin or he's in the whatever. What can we throw at him? That was more or less what the films were about.
well, the
In that
supporting characters
sense,
are functional. And
yeah,
I
but it's
feel
like
like
even
Medina's
then,
functional in a few layers, much like a Sam Raimi movie would have
yeah,
She gets a
some
bit,
of the
I feel
supporting
like
characters.
he's
a bit more
more
depth for
adept
the other
at
characters.
handling the, not to say this was not adept, but it's just like he's got a bit more. He's got years on these guys in order to more effectively balance the balance of characterization, and what kind of gory stuff can we throw at him. With the original Evil Dead films, that was more about what kind of stuff can we throw at Ash, and that was never really about anything more than that. And that was what was enjoyable about it as the series progressed, was it was like, oh, what kind of ridiculous stuff can happen, and that's kind of the enjoyment factor because it is just so out there. And I do feel like to a certain extent this one was trying to have a little bit more in terms of characterization, which is not to say it didn't work, but I do feel like you didn't have to do that much more in order for it to be truly effective in the same way as something like
I thought it. I thought it had.
like Shaun of the Dead. You know what I mean?
I thought it had
Because
the perfect balance and
that
never
works on
dragged.
Shaun of the Dead works on the script level,
Well,
in
Shaun of the
terms
Dead
of
dragged a little bit
characterization.
for me, and this didn't drag.
No, this one has more going on for sure. But I'm just saying, on the script level, something like Shaun of the Dead works as a story. Not to say this one doesn't, but it's just like I feel like there's some key ingredients missing to make like a whole functional script in
I'm
terms
saying
of
and I'm saying
character arcs and everything.
I'm saying there's a more functional balance where you can have just slightly too much, and like this hit just like I personally think Shaun of the Dead is a little wordy. Like I mean, I remember being kind of like during some of it, whereas with this, not having that problem. So I think
Well, I mean, it is
slightly
also
too far
an Edgar
overplayed.
Wright film, so there's a reason why.
Let's talk about the music that Brody finds that made me very well for the title that they found for their band.
I have almost bought the vinyl of the music for this movie like so many times. Like
I want to get it. It's really good.
Yeah, it's a good soundtrack.
you guys have it.
I like the part where they're digging through the CDs and they randomly are just like anal cunt.
Oh.
The band names in it.
Yeah.
I love the band name.
Yeah, it's like a grindcore band.
Sitting on the bench, and he's like, "Oh, I've got some CDs that you can check out," and she's like, "You know," and he's like, "Oh no, here, that one."
This is a little too advanced for you right now. Here, start with this.
He should have started off easy with something like Black Sabbath. Got to start with the old school,
Oh, yeah.
and then work your way up.
Well,
To be honest,
the sound of their band did sound a little doomy at times. I noticed that.
Ooh, what's happening with the audio there?
Yeah, it was weird.
It's stretched. Yeah, they were
Probably a delay with her internet.
they were more like what you said about grindcore was right. Like they were kind of like a lot of the music in this was kind of like Whitechapel-y. Like they make
More
references to Cannibal Corpse. They have like Trivium posters. You know, you see the particular genre of metal. I mean, if I was starting somebody off in metal, I would not even consider Black Sabbath, which is kind of funny.
Well, I would, because you got to start from the beginning. You know, you gotta.
Well, if you really want to take that, you know, to its extreme, you know, why don't you go all the way back to Chavout? I can't even say it. Fuck me. About all the way back to Tchaikovsky or whatever.
Tchaikovsky.
Okay, I was close.
Well, yeah, do it. You know, you gotta study. You gotta know music as a whole. You know, not
if you want to
just
know
one
music as a
genre.
whole, you have to go back into the Bronze Age and look at.
Yes.
You have to go way earlier than
You can
Tchaikovsky.
Yes,
save yourself a lot of time by looking at where you want to be and then finding a. You're insane. Or maybe it's
But
me.
the question for any music theorists out there, was the actual Black Hymn, did that use the Devil's Third at all?
I
Don't know.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, just again to tie it back to Black Sabbath, that
Probably
was what
not.
made. Well, that was what made their song Black Sabbath what it was that they used the Devil's Third, which was a I think it was a tritone that was banned in medieval times.
What I wanted to mention is that there was a mention of Ron Halford when he was talking about the reversing the song to, you know, let's do it Ron Halford style. Well, I went back and looked up, you know, whether Ron Halford actually did in fact have anything to do with the reverse song.
Rob,
in fact,
not Ron.
well, yeah,
Yes, it is Rob Halford.
Rob Halford, yeah.
Halford.
Of
Ron's
Judas
his
Priest.
goofy younger brother. No, I don't know.
But Rob Halford evidently went to court, because of an interaction. Evidently, two young kids had actually killed themselves, and the parents actually sued because they thought that one of his songs on an album actually said "Do it, do it," and it turns out that it was just heavy breathing of his on the or on the song, and it could have sounded like "Do It," and the judge ruled in favor of Halford. But he did.
Are you thinking of Ozzy, because he
No.
went to court about?
No, this
was
Ozzy
Rob.
went to court for something almost exactly that same.
this
It was
was This was
Okay.
Rob.
There was a lot of that going on in the 80s where
A lot of
Yeah.
Dee Snider also spoke in court about music censorship and stuff. There was like a bunch of that stuff happening.
At the PMRC hearings, yeah.
But there was, in fact, I actually showed Katie earlier an article that described some of what went on in the LA Times. But yeah, ultimately, 7 years after the album that he was supposedly saying he actually did do a reverse message in the song "Love Bites." So, which, as far as I knew, Led Zeppelin was was one of the main ones that was known for having in Stairway to Heaven.
Well, that wasn't ever intentional. That was just people trying to find something. Now, granted, there have been people that have deliberately put actual backmasked messages in there. But as far as the one that you're thinking of, the infamous Stairway to Heaven supposed backwards message, that's called the reversed audio theory, meaning that, if you listen to a sentence in reverse, then that reveals the speaker's true intentions, which is not at all true.
Pink Floyd too.
Pink Floyd.
I swear to God, if you play the album on Led Zeppelin 4 backwards, there is a message around the same time that it talks about two paths. It says, "Here's to my sweet Satan," and it's Robert Plant singing backwards. So
it's not. It's I have done this myself, where I have and anyone can do this. You just sing the lyrics as they're written forwards, just sing them and record them, and then you play it backwards. If you have a program that lets you play backwards, you'll be saying the exact same stuff, and it is just because that's the way that those words happen to sound when they are reversed, except that according to the reverse audio theory, that tends to be only valid if you are looking for something secretive or dangerous or whatever to be said. If you don't have any kind of presuppositions or context
for it, you don't find it.
Basically, yeah. Right. But if you don't have any kind of presupposition, or if you don't have the intended text like written down for you as you hear it, then it doesn't sound like anything. And I've done that, where I've listened to stuff backwards and I don't have anything in front of me. I'm like, this doesn't sound like anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of that stuff is like that. Or I think at most like a practical joke. Like, I bet when that first broke, I bet whoever was behind writing the thing was just laughing their ass off. Idiots. Or at least that's what I
it was. I think it was Robert Plant more or less did that.
Intentionally put stuff in there that's like, what is it?
People have subsequently done that, where they've intentionally put stuff that actually is reversed in there. But yeah, it was just a lot of 80s hysteria in general.
I'm sure Jimmy Page was laughing his butt off because he actually lived in he actually lives in Aleister Crowley's mansion. So
yeah. Well, he was
I don't make too many people mad with my lack of knowledge of classic rock.
Well, you gotta start with the classics, seriously.
When I first got into music, the only classic rock that didn't put me to sleep like right away was Ozzy Osbourne.
In any case, what do we think about
we had this fight before. Let's move on.
Singing the song in reverse is a very plausible way of beating the odds against the evil in this movie.
Yeah, when they so for quick reference, when they find these like these pages with satanic lyrics on them and accidentally summon like a bunch of demons, and you undo the spell by singing the song backwards, just like what we were talking about.
Yeah, it was called the Black Hymn.
Yeah. So I thought that was kind of
where that comes from is the idea. The impetus for that is the idea that supposedly one of the rites in the Black Mass is the Lord's Prayer backwards, and so in this case you're like reversing the reversal, in a weird way.
Eventually it gets kind of diluted, I think, and it's like, oh, so what are we playing? Backwards, forwards? It's like, wait, so isn't that just a hymn? What?
Exactly. Well, that's exactly it. So here's one thing I didn't quite understand. I think I kind of understood, but I'm not sure if anyone else got this. So at the very, very end, he's like, you got to play it backwards, and so he, gets his guitar on and he does it for the final time, and he's like shredding, and it sounds. Because before, when they were playing it forwards, it was just a couple of, just a few droning notes. It wasn't really a full tune played in any specific time. It was just a couple notes. That's what made me think of The Devil's Third. But anyway, he's like playing a full, he's treading and everything, and it's like, okay, is it the idea that he's playing the song backwards, but he's just doing it fast, and he's like, oh, look at me, I did my coke. Is that the idea?
I feel like you might have missed what was going on. Like, he forgot the lyric. He forgot how to play it, and so he was playing the song he wrote with his friend.
Yeah, that's what the impression I got. That he was just playing straight ahead.
They hit you over the head with that. So he beats the demon with the song him and his friend wrote, because his friend like suppressed the demon. Like, he can't remember the actual black hymn for shit, let alone play it backwards.
Okay. Well, that was...
They said that in the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
So, Brandon, if there's anything that you can say to this whole frame, what would it be?
Well, first off, sorry for being late. Emergencies come up in life. But as far as this whole frame of it, I actually considered the ending very interesting with the film, where it led you to believe that things were going to go one way, and then it went in a different direction.
They killed the friends like so fast, and I was like, "Oh shit! Are they going to actually finish everybody off?"
I actually considered how fast they killed some of the people a little bit as a negative, because I thought that killing the bully off as fast as they did also.
I love that. That might have been my favorite scene.
It was kind of funny though. It's like, I don't think he was possessed. Yeah.
Yeah, the way that they handled that, like after the fact, was kind of funny. But I do see what you're saying, that there wasn't really a final showdown or anything.
So if you were wondering what I was talking about with, for the people who haven't seen it, so the kid has to go live with his like shitty family, and he's constantly picked on by, what was he, like his cousin or something?
His cousin.
Like mercilessly like beats him up and shit at school. And so after the ridiculous sequence was the insane zombie battle with the dildos, which I hope we get to. That guy walks in and he's like, "What the fuck's going on here?" And he just like, what is he? He doesn't. Yeah, he just chainsaws him. For a moment, I thought he shot him, but as soon as he sees the bully, he just chainsaws him in the face. I got him. And his friend's like, "Pretty sure I don't think he was possessed." Yeah, he was possessed.
Yeah, he like cuts part of his head off.
Like, we were talking about Simpsons in the pre-show. And it's kind of like that classic moment. Like, "Hey, neighbor, can I chew your ear?" Blam! Dad killed Zombie Flanders!
So let's talk about that insane dildo. Mom and Dad kill.
Clearly, in addition to Sam Raimi and early Peter Jackson, clearly the filmmakers are big Lloyd Kaufman fans.
So... what would
I just like that moment, like reminding us of Homer Simpson line. He was a zombie?
Well,
like,
why
he just sees Flanders and shoots him.
Why would Mom and Dad have so many sex toys hidden?
Because they were religious freaks.
Exactly.
He was like, "Yeah, going for it."
That is that duology.
So they're attacked by a zombie mom and dad. Him and his friend are attacked by a zombie mom and dad when they go back to their house. And so they barricade themselves in the parents' bedroom, and they're like, "What kind of weapons are we going to find in these? Does he have guns?" It's like, "I don't think so." And they're rooting around, and they find many, many large and various sex toys. They've got like
in a box labeled church stuff.
Come out with these large anal beads, and the largest what would the phallus of a rubber dildo that's
like a double-ended one.
Yeah. As weapons.
A nightstand too. Did you notice it was like wet and shit? It was like,
weapons of mass destruction.
I love how that whole scene is shot too, like all the slow-mo, like dicks hitting faces and stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
There were a lot of dicks in there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't. I don't know. It was
decent.
Oddly tasteful, I think, is how I would describe the dicks in this movie.
Well, the thing that you find with any person or system of beliefs that is very repressed or is very much about like harsh personal control and things like that, inevitably you do find that there's a lot of
Psychosexual
pushback.
psychosis.
Well, it's a lot of pushback, and that's why you see all the the stories of like the priests that get or the pastors that get caught with like the gay prostitute, or they die of autoerotic asphyxiation or things like that. So it has a real life basis.
Well, I mean, it's a historical basis.
Tyrannosaurus.
I mean, this is a historical basis that goes back to the churches in the early times, where you used to have the priests taking secret wives, or all of the secret mistresses of the Pope. It's that whole idea that the more
the Pope and the King, and any kind of nobility that's supposed to be above that sort of thing.
But the more restrictions you put on, the more they rebel.
I thought the balls were would have been a more effective weapon, though. Like they looked heavy,
I think they did get somebody with them in the beginning.
They at least like knocked somebody down with them. Like the guy just like they kind of flailed like the double-ended dildo in the guy's face, and it was funny, but it didn't seem to really put him down or do much damage. Whereas they hit one of them, the zombies, with the balls, and they went down.
and ultimately, when Zach was under siege from the father zombie, Brody went over into the shed and grabbed. What did he grab?
Oh, he grabbed a chainsaw, because we went like full Evil Dead, and I like how they had the little moment where like he can't like get it started. Like they did like a quick montage of him just trying to pull it in different like positions.
Well, they did the wasn't like a complete. It was more of an homage. I wouldn't call it a ripoff. They did the homage to the chainsaw suit up montage, and they didn't say groovy, but they said their own catchphrase, and so that was a good way to pay homage there. One thing I was kind of hoping for, which there's only been one movie that I've seen, and there's probably others, but there's only one movie I've ever seen where a chainsaw actually behaves like a real chainsaw, which is Pain and Gain, where they try to use a chainsaw to chop up a body, and like the blade gets caught in the person's hair and it clogs it, and so they have to return it and get another one. And and then so there's that, but then in other movies like Evil Dead and everything, it's like, oh, look at that chainsaw is like this spinning blade of amazingness, and it's like, it just in a weird way I was like, I really want his hair to like get caught in that thing, or like something to where, or for it to like get partway and then get like stuck in the rib cage or something. You know what I mean?
Something like I was expecting that to happen, honestly, because it's like, oh man, is he gonna like run out of gas or something? Like something happened. It's like, oh nope, I guess it just works. Well, fine.
That's what I was really hoping for, because I've seen so many movies that use the chainsaw as like the unstoppable melee weapon, and in real life they're a little bit more fragile. But I will say that this did finally put a weed whacker to good use. Took a while.
Yeah, I like how did anybody notice they used like a piece of barbed wire?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the most badass weapons probably in any movie.
What did everyone think of when Medina showed up and was kicking ass with the so-called demon turn?
That's what happens when you start listening to metal. I keep trying to tell you guys that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We haven't heard from you two. Go on.
No, I'm just saying that's a very realistic portrayal of what happens when you're introduced to heavy metal.
So when you were introduced to metal, you just immediately picked up an axe and beheaded anyone that was in
Well,
2
I
feet
was
of you.
pretty little. I was pretty young, but that's where the badassery begins.
So
I
you
like
just
how
so you just used safety scissors back in the day. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah,
Little girl interrupted. That's the thing.
I would steal razor blades from like the medicine cabinet and put like duct tape on one end of them and like swing those around. But enough about me. Like it's kind of cool. Like in her scene where she first hears metal and she has like mountaintop fantasy and she has an axe and she's like spinning it around. Like after she shows up and like nails one of the demons with the axe, she's doing the same axe tricks and it's like, wait, did she just learn how to do that from like the fantasy? And it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
You know what's
I don't
funny
question it.
about that, and also the final battle with the
What was
demon that
what was your
becomes
question?
the.
Hey, can we get Katie's question? What was that?
What?
What was your question?
The final
I
battle.
didn't have a question, I don't think.
I
Oh,
thought
Dave?
you said I had a question.
No.
No.
Oh, well, never mind then. Continue, Dane. Sorry.
Yeah. So anyway, the with the axe thing that you said, plus the in the final battle with the demon where he's like teleporting all over the place. For whatever reason, the combination of those two things, in my brain, for whatever reason I thought of Power Rangers, and I
Sure,
know that
why not?
I know that wasn't at all what was intended, but that's where my brain went.
Funny, I think was it that? Maybe I'm getting it confused with something else, but I was trying to read about the actors, and I don't know if I read that somebody was in Power Rangers or if I'm confusing it with something else. That'd be a really weird tie-in, though, if it was that would have brought it up.
This 3 of the actors have been in one or the other of the Power Rangers programs.
Okay, I'm not crazy. Okay.
Well, isn't that neat? I actually did think that the what's her face? Her name escapes me. Say it again.
Hey, usually
Medina?
Medina, yes. She easily, I think, could have been a ranger in terms of her determination and everything. I know that in original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, it was Zack, the Black Ranger, who had the axe as his main weapon. But she definitely could have done it. I think she had all the right moves and the right determination. So
Yeah, in fact, Medina was actually in Power Rangers Samurai, the TV series.
yeah, I wondered if I'd have seen her somewhere.
And so is Kate Elliott, whichever character that was.
my memory only goes back to like Power Rangers in Space and Lost Galaxy. Like I didn't see any of this other
I watched
weirdness.
the only ones that I watched were original. I watched Zeo. I watched Lightspeed Rescue, and then I watched like the first few episodes of, I think it was Super Samurai. Maybe that's where I'm thinking of her having come from, because that was the one that was the one that reintroduced the classic theme, and I'm like, oh, and it had some descendants of Bulk and Skull in there, and that's why I was like, oh, okay.
As far as I'm concerned, the series ends with the finale of Power Rangers in Space. Like, you will cry at the end of Power Rangers in Space. It was good. It was really good. And I want to see more. And I want to see more stories with that new continuity from the new movie, which was awesome and rad. And anyone who thinks otherwise is an idiot.
Oh, I liked it quite a lot. I would like to see more.
It was so badass. Like, it was great. It's like, but the Zords don't look like they're supposed to. Who fucking cares? The rest of the movie is so good, it doesn't matter.
Right, that's an example of how you can make like an action-oriented movie that does work on the character level. You really get to know those people and care about them, and it's just like that. That's a good example of how to do that. If anything, it could have stood to have a little bit more action, but then again, if they do another one, then they may, because we know who they are now, so they may be able to.
So bad, like,
yeah, me too.
Bring it on. And fuck off, edgelords who are like, the old one is better. You're wrong. You will always be wrong.
Well, supposedly, though it didn't do amazing in theaters, supposedly it didn't well enough with merchandising that they were thinking that financially it would be acceptable to do another one. But I hope that remains to be true.
Merchandising.
What was that?
Alrighty. So,
Couldn't understand
ultimately, is there a character that we have missed? Let's talk about the two friends.
Oh, the nerds. The nerds were great. Like, I think they're maybe not shout directly into the mic. The nerds were great. Like, I like how after the girl rescues them and they're like hiding out in the school. It's it's like, okay, what are we? We're doing something really important, and they're like going over like D&D campaigns, and it's like, sure, why not? And they're trying to fight zombies by like throwing dice at them. Like, at least they tried putting them in a paintball gun, so they're trying. But I enjoyed them. Like, they're doing their best.
There's dice everywhere. I just remember that line. That's all. I remembered because I used to be part of a dungeon master thing several years back, and
No way.
yeah. Yeah.
Out of all the nerdy things I've ever been in, never did Dungeons and Dragons.
Nor did I. I'm actually uncreative.
I was always a rogue, and I was good at it. Okay. Anyway.
I don't even know what you're talking about because I have never played that game in my life.
Yeah, everything is always a roll of the die, and you always have a dungeon master who is a narrator of the game, and it's just. And you got to have people who know how to do it and have an imagination to go along with it.
Like, I have friends who do it, but I suck at it because I never have a good time when I try. So.
And you probably wouldn't in this setting, since the DM was clearly the kind you don't want to play with. The
no,
lawyer
DM.
He would probably roll like, I have the beholders at you, like, constantly,
The Impossible Beast, I felt I banned this character. Nobody here is going to get that because you...
No, can't relate. My nerd. I got to trade in my nerd card now.
Just
I don't qualify.
For fuck's sake. It's so good. It's so good, and you will not regret a second of it.
You just have to understand the logistics of Dungeons Dragons to start it. I mean, most of the bullshit is getting through the dice because all your levels, everything like that, you have to roll to get your percentages, and that's the bullshit that you got to go through to get to your character. Even, but in any case,
Sounds like a hoot and holler.
Actually, it's like in the movie Wet Hot American Summer, where they actually have the D&D nerds saving the day at the end. Because there's
kind of like how Stranger Things kind of portrayed it. Even though at the time they were not plastic creatures, they were actually silver, somewhat of silver.
I did enjoy that one brief moment in this movie where the dude shot the dice with the gun at the
demon.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Where you thought it worked.
Which, if you ever,
Yeah,
if we ever want to do this, there's a movie called Dark Dungeons, which was
oh fuck yeah,
that's a hilarious movie.
We should see that because it was based on the.
Hey, I know a lot about this. I'll do this one.
Go ahead.
So there are these awful religious things called chick tracts. They're like these little propaganda pamphlets with like badly drawn comics in them with terrible messages. And people will just like leave them in places because they think that they're like a ministry thing. Like they think people are convinced by these stories. I mean,
I used to work at Target, and I had to clean the bathrooms every now and again, and I would actually see some of them. That was before I knew what they were called, but I would see them left in the men's room. And
I've gotten them before. People have given them to me. Directly to me.
But yeah, the Dark Dungeons was an officially approved adaptation of the famous Dark Dungeons tract about the dangers of Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop games. And Well, apparently the film, the whole idea is that it is a faithful adaptation, but it was made by people who clearly love tabletop gaming, and so they're like, those are the role players. We've tried to get them kicked off campus, but they're just too popular.
My one of my favorite channels here on YouTube is the Bible Reloaded, and they did they do episodes on chick tracks like all the time, like they do voices for the characters and whatnot. And one of their early ones is they review like that adaptation of Dark Dungeons. Like Dark Dungeons is the chick track from the 70s that's like Dungeons and Dragons is genuine witchcraft, and it tells this utterly insane story. A lot that tries to like drive that point home. Like somebody is like, "Oh, I'm selling off all my stuff to buy Dungeons and Dragons things," and it's like, "I'm really my character. I'll get the real power if I kill myself." Like it's unbelievable. It's intense.
Oh, and that's the thing with chick tracks are so off the beaten path of mainline Christianity, and they've been designated as like hate group.
They are hate They're considered hate propaganda.
Yeah, it was by the Southern Poverty Law Center, I think,
Although,
designated them as such.
Yeah.
to be honest, if you actually read a bunch of them, you'll see why. Like many of them are intensely vile. Like no joke.
But they're so vile that they're comical.
There are ones with storylines such as the doctor finds out that this girl's dad is molesting her, and instead of telling any authorities, he gets him to pray about it and has the girl ask Jesus for forgiveness. And then he sends them home together.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Well, they
many of them are far less wholesome than that.
Well, I'm going off.
And that one got
the
banned.
Jontron review that I saw, but like there was they referenced a different one where it was like, oh, the Muslims are secretly worshiping the moon god, instead of Allah.
That's a common one too. I mean, most of them just have like insane amounts of like just either outright racism or violence, or I know those are kind of used as buzzwords nowadays, but if you read them, I'm not kidding. Like they're all really bad.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's like that's not even like a salacious, like you said, it's not even a salacious slur. It's like mainline Christianity says the same thing.
Well, mainline Christianity like often is more than happy to hand them out. I mean, like I used to go to churches and just I would happily be handed like stacks of them at churches, like here you go, and I would be like, great, it's so good to have these things off the streets, and I'd like dispose of them in front of them.
Yeah, it depends on which church you're talking about. I mean, there's
Baptist.
some that. Which one?
Baptists.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
I see them the most at Baptist churches.
Yeah.
Although I remember going to
I know a lot about this. Sorry, guys.
North side.
Well, I do too. So.
I remember going to a Baptist church in the north side because when I was growing up, I used to know a family of where they had 10 kids and they homeschooled their children, and they were Baptists.
Yep.
So we went in, and a couple of their youth things, they used to sing, "We are sparks for Jesus, sparks to light the world."
So they were like an episode of Daria.
Well, I was homeschooled, and I never did anything close to that.
Well, and
I feel like we've gotten off track.
Way.
Isn't that the whole joy of this show?
So
I feel like we need to get back to business.
To speak on the subject of the nerdy characters, the only thing that I thought the characters were interesting, but I kept feeling in the back of my head that the movie was making fun of them for being what they were.
A little bit,
instead
but you could kind of
we're outcast together.
a little bit. You could kind of tell that was the attitude they took towards like all of the different kind of stereotypes of like these high school kids, though. I mean, like they show the jock, and he's like clearly very dumb and very bad.
Yeah, I mean, they felt like tropes that were intentionally exaggerated for the sake of the fact that they were tropes.
They were tropes all across the board, and I guess that was one issue I would have is that I did feel like it was on all levels. It was very tropey at the expense of, genuine characterization, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like that's
not
kind of
not
goes with the genre.
not unenjoyable, but again, it's like just trying to give it that extra little push. You know what I mean?
I kind of like the simplistic nature of it because for me, the focus tends to be more on the simple storyline and the gore and the over the top sort of humor. I don't know. When I look at a movie like an Evil Dead or Army of Darkness or something, like I'm not looking for deep connections to the characters and like a real like
Yeah.
complicated plot. I really just like the fun of it, that it's a lighter hearted horror movie, and I feel like
Well, and
that's what this
that's the
movie
point I
really
was bringing
nails.
up. That was the point I
Precisely.
was bringing up
That's
earlier.
where a
was-
lot of critical evaluation of movies kind of falls apart. And it's like, we're watching The Burning. It's like, oh, where's the character development? The plot isn't that good. It's like, you're an idiot. Please die.
Well, that was the point I was trying to get at earlier.
Yeah.
Was that I think Sam Raimi knows that, and he goes all
It's a
the way
dark
with
shot.
it. If that makes sense.
It's a dark shot at one of my friends who actually said that to me once. Wow. We were really fired up when we were on stimulants trying to read our stats homework.
So ultimately, one of the things that we somewhat discussed was the music, and we'll get to that in a moment. But what did we think about the special effects here?
Rad. They work.
Yeah, they're super fun. Lots of cool stuff. Lots of blood. A lot of splatter. Splatter gore type movies. I enjoyed these. I enjoyed that in Turbo Kid as well. Like just the over the top. It's a lot of fun.
A little bit too much ooze for my liking, but I think that's my only real complaint.
So now that we've talked about, what did you think about the effects, Jake? Were they a little bit too much for you?
Well, I will admit the way they did them, it was just enough over the top that it wasn't too bad. It just got to the point where there was so much of it that I was like, eh. But it was kind of in that border zone. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. But it was mostly well done. I will say. In terms of, I guess, the intended effect, at least from my perspective, I think they did it.
Brandon, what were your thoughts on the special effects in this film?
It was reminiscent of Evil Dead for me, as far as the way that it was done. I don't know if it carried across. I've said it to a couple people that it reminded me of a combination of the Evil Dead and the movie Trick or Treat, just metal themed instead of heavy rock themed. And that really translated well through the special effects, in my opinion. It really did feel like I was watching the Sam Raimi style movie in that vein.
Okay. So, though we touched on it a little bit before, what did we think about the music? Did it use some old school music, or did it use some new music? What do you guys think?
I thought the music was really good. It
They're
was
actually-
a
Go ahead.
mix of heavy metal, death metal, doom metal. I mean,
a lot
they
of
were all
New
over the
Zealand
place with it.
bands, Canadian bands, a lot of bands that I'm not even that familiar with, too, are on the
Yeah,
soundtrack.
some of them I'm curious to look up the soundtrack to see what some of them were.
I actually
I felt like
expected
it
there
all
to be
worked
more.
really well.
I kind of expected there would be more music than there was. Not to say there wasn't any, but I was just like,
Oh,
with that.
Yeah, I think you're kind of right on that, because I expected there to be musical montages more often. You know what I mean? I'm not quite sure what I was expecting, but I expected music. I'd expected music to have, I guess, a larger role, which sounds stupid considering the plot. But
Well, no, I'm right there with you. I was
Music and
expecting
scenes,
like
you know what I
wall to
mean?
wall, you know.
Yeah, I don't think that sounds stupid at all, given the plot. I mean, given the fact that all the characters are like really big metalheads, and the fact that most of them were in a band, you would have thought there would have been a little bit more in the performance aspect, and probably a little bit more just in terms of background music.
Well, it was kind of clear that they were like that they didn't quite know what they were doing with the band. It's like, you remember how to play, right? Yeah.
It was a band, quote unquote, but
Well, and there wasn't even the other thing I was expecting was for there to be more like kind of Diablo Cody-esque reference, kind of name dropping of like bands or things that happened in the world of metal or whatever. It's, the person that they mainly talk about was one that was, invented for the movie, which makes sense. But
Well,
it's just like
the references were there if you just know how to find them. There's
yeah,
tons of metal references. I mean, even there's points where they talk about where what's his face? Zach talks about getting kicked in the balls or his balls grabbed or something like that, and then he comes blood after that. Like that's actually a song. I come blood. It's
Yeah.
like being able to pick up on those little references, or like the paint, the way their faces are painted. Like, did you catch what's his name? Oh, I can't remember the other one of the dorky kids. His face paint is like Peter Criss.
yes, that I did. I definitely
Like
did catch
little
that.
things like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I caught those, and I caught this like when
I
they
caught
were.
his.
Well, it's like they seem. Well, my point more was that they seemed. This could also just be my own biases, but they also did. They seemed to be more. These particular characters seem more almost like modern metal kids, or like
Oh, sure.
black metal,
Oh,
death metal, as opposed to.
It's in modern times.
Yeah, I know, but it's just like I guess I'm such a you want to get to know this.
I want to say teetotaler, but that doesn't quite seem correct.
Yeah, the metal that they're talking about is hardcore fucking metal. Like, if you're not familiar with that genre of metal, it's not your big four.
Yeah.
That's not the metal we're talking about here. And
Yeah.
I'll be completely honest, I'm a metalhead, but I'm not a big like grindcore metalhead. Like, that's just not my thing. Like, I listen to Cannibal Corpse and stuff like in high school, but I grew out of it. My taste grew out of it.
Yeah,
But
same
I'm
here.
still a metalhead for tons of other, metal that I enjoy. It's just that particular subgenre of metal isn't my forte necessarily. So I think they for working in that subgenre or that area, they paid homage well to that. But you're not gonna catch a ton of references to Black Sabbath, or I think there's a Slayer reference in there somewhere, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not the metal we're talking about in this movie, and that's
Exactly.
not
Yeah,
the
that's
albums they're
fine.
looking at and talking about. That's just not it.
Like,
And
if
that's
you look,
fine,
if you pay attention to the background too, I mean, I didn't notice like dialogue references because I don't know everything, but I did notice, that the guy had like patches for Guar, Trivium, Cannibal Corpse was pretty prominent everywhere.
Yeah,
I
and I picked up on all
more
the
patches.
visual references. It was just more. I would have thought, given the setup, the character setup, that it would have comprised more of their lexicon. But again, that's just me.
I would make the heretical argument that Black Sabbath isn't metal as we understand metal today.
I
Well,
do
but
think
Black
that would be a
Sabbath
bit
is
heretical.
pretty much the godfathers of metal. There would be no metal today without Black Sabbath.
Led Zeppelin.
Right.
Well, eukaryotic bacteria are the grandfathers of birds, but they're not the same thing.
I mean, Black
you're
Sabbath
thinking
is
more like great grandfathers.
I was gonna say Black Sabbath is to metal much like the Sex Pistols is to punk.
Okay,
Depending
so
on
like theropods to dinosaurs.
I mean, yeah, depending on who you
like
talk
grunge,
to, some people don't
just
even
like
like.
Mudhoney is the godfather to grunge.
Who?
We can't have this argument tonight. I don't have enough time.
Yeah. Well, the
So-
point is, all music, all
I
art
started a fight.
begets. Well, all art begets art. That's the basic message of it.
Yeah.
All right.
So I wanted to know if anybody picked up on this. No one mentioned it. When Zach gets rickrolled, when he takes that record, that Hexen Sword record from the dude where they bust into his house, you know, the old rocker dude, and he gets that record from him. And
Okay.
that's where the black hymn music comes from. He pulls the jacket out of the album.
Oh yeah,
Inside
it's in
Movies.
the vinyl.
And the music falls out, but the record, he looks at it and he says, it's a fucking Rick Astley record, and he tosses it. He gets rickrolled. That's like a great joke, and I didn't know if anybody picked up on
Oh
the
my
rickroll.
god, how did I miss it?
Yeah,
had
that
read
was a
about
good
that,
joke.
but I didn't actually get the joke personally, I will admit.
If you don't know the whole rickrolling, you know, sensational
How did
internet
somebody
joke.
not know the Rickroll?
Except I like
Huh?
Rick Astley.
I'm sorry.
I mostly hate him because, well, you should know why. Did anybody catch
I'm a bad one to ask because I like all genres of music pretty much.
Did anyone catch the after credit sequence involving the record?
Yes.
Yeah. Where he was talking to his bud.
Yeah.
Zach talks to him through the record.
Yeah.
Saying band names. Like, I can't use Deathgasm. I just get sad with everybody dead. Like, hell is great. All low rockers are down here. It's like, he's having a good time. That's good.
So,
Rickroll. Wow.
did anyone did everyone at least enjoy the movie to a certain extent?
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah, it was decent.
I went and looked at my list of movies for that year, and it was nowhere near the bottom of the list. But that was the year that had Paul Blart Mall Cop 2. So.
Oh.
We're doing that one next week. Woo-hoo.
Right.
That's a movie I saw for free, and I overpaid.
I heard the first one was really good, but I heard the second one was just like the most painful exercise in futility.
The second one crapped all over everything that was good about the first one.
Oh, fuck that. Never seeing it. Boycott.
Sounds like the recipe to a successful sequel.
All right. Did anyone else have anything else related to the movie?
I thought it was funny that, like, me and Katie come on here like, yeah, it's great, and everybody else is sort of like, meh, yeah, it was fine.
Well,
Pretty much how it goes.
I guess I could say I haven't really exactly spoken out whether I've enjoyed the film. I actually I did get that Evil Dead kind of a vibe from it, and I did get that Trick or Treat kind of a vibe, as you guys were saying. But all in all, I thought it was a somewhat fun movie. I thought it was different that it was done in New Zealand with some New Zealand actors.
The actors were kind of distracting at times, though.
Yeah, I agree.
Why distracting? I mean, I thought that was what gave it its flavor. But again, I love Flight of the Conchords, so I mean that's kind of where I'm coming from.
You keep mentioning that, though. I am curious, like with this being a horror crowd and everything, if anyone has seen that group's horror movie, What We Do in the Shadows.
Yes, that's a great movie. That movie has really good that movie has really good characterization and a great concept executed really well.
I want the sequel to happen. They were going to do one about the werewolves. In fact, originally, because they did the mockumentary about the vampires, the first one, you know, and then they were supposed to do one on the werewolves and and how their lives were. So I don't know what happened with that. in any case, on that note,
And that movie had Jermaine Clement in it and Riz Darby. No Brett McKenzie though. They I don't think that he and Jermaine have done anything together on screen since Flight of the Conchords, even though Jermaine and Riz Darby have been together again.
On that note, I think we're going to close out our discussion. Did anyone else have anything else that they wanted to add to the foray of Deathgasm?
I think you can see Deathgasm on Shudder. It wasn't on Netflix or Hulu.
It is on Amazon Prime.
It's on Amazon Prime?
Yeah.
It used to be on Netflix like a
It
year
used to be,
ago.
yeah,
I saw it on
but
Netflix.
Or you can get the German 3D Blu-ray like we have. And watch it on your region-free player.
I can't get mine to work. God damn it! Like, I have the player, I just can't get the software to cooperate.
That's like the big thing I want for Christmas is a region-free player.
I just want to see the Wicker Man. God damn it!
Specifically, a region-free player that can play 4K discs as well.
Well,
actually, all 4Ks are region free.
Well, no, I mean, well, like
4K is natively region free, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like a player that can play 4K discs and also is region free, so that way I could play region free or other region DVDs and Blu-rays and all that stuff.
Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah,
that's what I was trying to say.
Small TV behind me, it plays all regions if it's a DVD. So, but in any case, let's close out the argument and let's start with Brandon. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Oh, yes. I am on a YouTube channel called Septum Sin versus the World. We cover physical media and our love for physical media. Recently, we released a top 15 on Criterion Films and our big epic, which is I figure is a good way of broadcasting that again. And we do various pickup videos and release videos.
Awesome. Going over to Kabuki Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm Jake, and I frequently guest on Septum Sin versus the World. And as I pointed out to Septum, we've become feature filmmakers with these top 15 lists. They're pretty lengthy, but they're fun, I think. But the and I'm working on a series of solo videos about the Criterion films that I have in my own collection, doing reviews on those. Posted one so far, there'll be more forthcoming. I do also have my own channel, Kabuki Jake. Right now I'm just working hard, trying not to go postal slinging Christmas trees.
Alrighty. Going over to Katie Cadaver, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure thing. I'm Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a body positive horror artist and alternative model. And you can find me on Facebook, Patreon, and Instagram, and Twitter. On Instagram, I'm at 3RDEYE0PEN, and I'm Katie Cadaver MKE on Twitter, so check me out there. I'm also the makeup artist for horror punk band Ratbat Spider. You can listen to them at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. You can also see them playing this Saturday at Kochanski's Concertina in Milwaukee on 37th and Burnham. They're going to be there for Krampus Fest, which is a benefit for, I believe it's the Fourth Dimension Sober Living Facility, and also benefits addiction awareness and recovery stuff.
Okay.
So come on out and see them this Saturday. And they're also, it's a 2-night thing, so there's a bunch of bands involved in this, and there's going to be a charity CD that you can purchase at the door, as well as your admission. So come check that out and support that cause. I am also a dead girl for Dead Girls Dark Coffin Classics horror TV show. You can watch episodes at vimeo.com/ddcc. And I am a Trauma with Trauma Entertainment, and you can find everything Trauma at trauma.com. I'm also a performer and producer for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque Productions. You can find us right now on Facebook at Grindhouse Tees, and our season is currently done, so we're taking a little break until spring. Hopefully, we'll get some things updated and some news posted on the page soon. I'm also an editor for Movies Galore Milwaukee, and I'm hoping to get some more reviews up soon. I actually did a couple reviews on some of the latest movies that I've seen, and I posted them to my own Facebook. 3 horror reviews. I saw, of course, the new Halloween and did a little review on that. The Suspiria remake. I did a short review on that. And the latest one that I saw, She Was So Pretty, Be Good for Goodness Sake. And I posted a little something on that too. So I will try to make sure I share those to the page as well. And I think we're working on our December list of movies, but not quite sure what we have for the podcast for next week. But it might be like Die Hard or National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's looking like it might be one of those two. Not sure.
Okay, well,
Well, we got to do Lampoons. I mean, there's a lot of
Yeah,
debate
pretty
over
sure.
whether or not Die Hard actually counts.
I've heard firm arguments that Die Hard is a Christmas movie. So
It's under contestation, at any rate.
well, I'm sure
I
we
say
can
no, but
I'm sure we could talk about the yays and nays of whether Die Hard is an actual Christmas movie on an episode if it gets chosen. So, going over to Dane, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I am Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Quite a bit of news lately. Gotten some news that the anthology I'm a part, well, one of the anthologies I'm a part of, For We Are Many. I was shown as one of the filmmakers. I was shown the preliminary artwork for the DVD Blu-ray package, and it looks really great. So that one is going to come out next year, and then I'm a part of 2 other ones, Clownsploitation and new one, Creepypasta. Those 2 are also, I think, going to come out next year. I would hope so. I've seen the artwork for Creepypasta, which looks amazing. It looks like a old VHS tape with a really cool creepy face on it. I'm like, yes, that looks amazing. I'm hoping it gets a physical release of some kind.
Those are eventually supposedly coming out on Trauma, right?
Yes, well, those 2 are, and then the other one, For We Are Many, is coming out via Hex Media. Well, for sure, Clownsploitation is being distributed through Trauma. I don't know about Creepypasta. I know that one is being there was like a jury selection, so that may in fact be a different distribution model for all I know. But at any rate, it is coming out, and I'll be a part of those. Those are all coming out. In the meantime, I am working on couple different feature film scripts and trying to find the correct business partners with which to get them developed and made. Just different things like that. 2019, I'm hoping is going to be a year that that's my goal is to get a spec script developed and made, whether by myself or with someone else directing or whatever. To get a feature film script made in some way. That's a goal of mine.
Okay, cool. Going over to Dustin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
What the fuck is that? Huh? Oh, well, I'm Dustin. I live here in Milwaukee and collect horror everything. So, my brain wasn't ready.
Who are you and what do you do?
Oh, right. I collect horror movies and assorted shit. I have an Instagram account for the collection that I'm really lazy on posting to, but follow me anyway at DHR Hunter. And I also recently launched a YouTube channel called The Crypto Horrors, where I try to do my own kinds of unboxing videos. And I haven't had the time to shoot anything longer, but I intend to eventually have interviews and reviews on there too. I have an interview with Tim. I keep trying to get an interview with Tim Seeley, uh, but stuff kind of keeps happening. Like the first time I had technical issues, the second time he had a scheduling emergency. It's gonna happen eventually, but I just have no idea when. You can also find me on Twitter at the Crypto Horrors, where I post angry political rants and assorted jokes. And I also have some measure of control over the Inside Movies Galore blog, and would like to put some reviews up there. So I have one that's been on the back burner for a while that I just kind of ran out of time to work on, but eventually that will be up there. So I don't quit.
Awesome.
But yeah.
So ultimately, I am the horror host for Inside Movies Galore. But as you can see, many of us actually have contributed to being a host of this show. But I also run a blog called Movies Galore of Milwaukee, and as well as do movie reviews on this channel. So definitely check out some of the cool reviews that I have coming out. Some are old, some are new. And as to what movie will be coming next week, we will decide that as we decide it. So in any case, definitely stay tuned. We have definitely some more cool stuff. Maybe Brandon and I and Kabuki Jake can get together and finally do the mermaid animated films. Who knows? Stay tuned for some definitely cool stuff. So like, share, and subscribe, everyone. Say good night.
Good night.
Bye.
Night.